If you're listening or watching this podcast, there's a good chance you're pretty into learning about systems or processes or procedures that you can plug into your business, which can help you deliver a certain product or service in a better way. We talk a lot about it on the show. We talk a lot about it in the community, and there seems to be across the board quite a growing and general interest for that sort of area of conversation. In today's episode, we're actually going through a process of a client of ours, which is a commercial solar customer journey, and we're talking through all the different stages, and it's really interesting. If you guys are ever wanting to understand how different stages of process might work for any given service, it doesn't have to necessarily be solar, or this example is, but by all means, I would encourage you guys to watch or listen to this and formulate your own sort of plan based off what you're going to hear today, because it goes through everything from energy audits and all these assessments and I suppose health checks on your appliances and all this kind of stuff, which is really quite an in-depth process. And then it goes through to the design and installation, and then after sales care, which is a really interesting conversation, because that's where we started introducing a recurring style of income into what would traditionally, or I suppose more commonly, be seen as sort of a one sale wonder, you install it and you're gone. Whereas the process that the gentleman's talking about today on the show, he's really built in a recurring aspect to his business based off these one sale products, which is absolutely fantastic. So I really encourage you guys to get in there and check this out. I'm sure you'll learn a lot. And it's great to have a practical example that you can apply these things to, within the trade space. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. I'm sure you guys have got some great processes and stuff as well. So if you want to jump into the Facebook community, and when you see this pop up in one of the threads there, by all means contribute. We'd love to hear your thoughts, or if you think there could be something done better, or if you're doing something better, or if something was a revelation, by all means let us know. Anyway, folks, enjoy the show. That's enough for me. I will see you in the community, and enjoy the show. Ciao. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome back to the Site Shed podcast. My name is Matt, and you are joining me and my buddy Gareth Felton from GreenElec. Gareth, welcome.
How are you, mate?
Good. Welcome back. This is the second conversation we're having on solar. We had one in a previous episode where we were talking a bit about the roadmap of the progress of solar and batteries and that kind of stuff, both on a residential and a commercial emphasis. In this conversation, we're talking more about, I suppose, the journey from a customer's point of view with a solar installation on a commercial residence. We're going to be touching on energy audits. We're going to be touching on design installations, after sales care, that kind of stuff. I know in the last episode, you mentioned that we didn't get a chance to touch on future storage and virtual grids and that kind of thing. Did you want to just recap on some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. First of all, thanks for having us back. Yeah, so last time we didn't touch on it, but it's really important that we do, because it's a conversation around the batteries and the storage side of things when it comes to solar. Look, future storage and a virtual grid is sort of where it's all headed. And I'll explain to you what that practically means, so that, people that aren't in the industry understand where that's headed and why that's beneficial to them as well down the track, but also why it's beneficial to having a stable energy grid, and why should we have a stable energy grid. So look, University of New South Wales is conducting a research project at the moment that we've been involved in. Ria's taken part in it, as she usually does. That's my wife, by the way. Look, they're looking into the future of a virtual power plant. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is because it leads back to people having batteries and storage systems on their homes. Effectively, a virtual power plant is energy comes off the roof into a battery, and then that battery is managed remotely by a business or someone who's been selected to manage the in and out of flow of energy from these batteries or from the solar systems. The reason they want to do that is to stabilize the peak demand periods and peak production periods of solar and loads on the grid, because currently you've got a high demand in the evenings and you've got a low demand but a high production in the daytimes because there's so much solar pumping in. So it's very volatile for the grid. And the energy's going one way fast, at one point, and the other way fast at the other point. What they're trying to do is level it out. And it's another way to control the energy. So it is another way that they'll be able to sort of access your dwelling. And a lot of people are worried about that, and they have opinions on giving people that much control over your way of living. But it is important because a stable grid is it's a safe grid. You know what I mean? Like the outages and stuff like that become less likely. The longevity of it is better. It just means things run a lot more efficiently and effectively too.
I think we're actually in the episode 2 of the Future of Energy series that I conducted back at the beginning of 2019.
Yeah.
The second episode, which was solar power fueling communities, they spoke about that. They spoke about some of these new communities which are actually being developed in areas, and they have that system built into it. And so, and the guy that was on the show was just saying, essentially, these communities, they're so profitable with their energy consumption that they're fueling their own community, and then they're pumping all this energy into the grid at scale because it's an entire suburb.
Yeah.
More or less. Yeah. And it's just a hugely profitable model for them. But it had to, I think he was saying it was kind of built that way from the beginning. Like it was all part of the town planning for that area.
Crazy.
Yeah. So it's quite fascinating.
It really is.
I'd never heard of that being a virtual grid or whatever, but
yeah. I mean, that way of doing it, when you can get a community on board in that sense, absolutely. I think where they're going with the virtual grid, though, is that they understand, and by they I mean, the people that own the grid, manage the grid, produce power and all that kind of stuff. I think they know that we are, in the foreseeable future, going to need grid power unless we have a major development in storage and cost of and all that kind of stuff. And in the meantime, there's still these high peaks and low lows, and they need to sort of flatten that out. The way that they are going to do that with a virtual power plant is basically during the day, what they want to do is be able to divert the energy. Instead of it all going to the grid, they want to be able to divert it into your battery. Or if you're not actually, if you have a battery and your house is using more energy than what your solar is producing and not charging your battery, the ability to charge your battery then as well from the grid and take that load out of the grid when there's a high production period, and then have the ability in the evenings when there's a high peak demand, if you're not using all of your energy capacity from a battery, to then discharge that again out to the grid to then lower the demand on the grid in a dark period. And then again, so that flattens out that curve. And there's even startups that have gone up recently that they're creating devices that they can turn on your storage hot water unit, and that will obviously create quite a large load on the grid. And that'll suck up during the day the excess energy being produced, that then they don't have to manage their products, or the grid maintainers don't have to manage their products as well. So the virtual grid is something that we can benefit as consumers, because it's a paid thing. You become a power generator, just like a coal power fire station,
right?
But you've got 20 panels on your roof instead of a big facility. So it's a really interesting way to think about the future of solar and what the returns could be down the track.
And would part of that membership, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, I don't know, community conglomerate, right? Okay. I'm just wondering if part of that would obviously, be if someone's drawing off your hot water, system, and obviously it's creating wear and tear on your hot water heaters and that kind of stuff. Obviously, they're going to they're going to expire faster. So there'd have to be some sort of allowance for that, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, they've got to think of it all. I think that's why it's taking quite some time to develop this kind of stuff. And it's not mainstream at the moment, but the research is happening, and I think the interest is there from consumers' point of view, because, like, I don't know many clients, definitely none in the last 12 months that I've spoken to, that haven't mentioned, can I get a battery yet?
Right.
The answer is always yes. It just depends on what you're basing.
It's viable.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
So, just to make sure we got that across, because it's exciting. It's it's huge, and it might not right now seem massive, but it's a big win for us to all be able to use generated, clean energy, and also work a little bit more as a community, as you said, help each other out and stabilise the grid a bit more.
I think it's a testament to going back to what you were saying in the last episode, the rapidly evolving pace of, this energy vertical that you operate in. Like, it's just, there's so many things. I mean, who knows, maybe the next conversation we have in a couple of years, it might be something completely different. We're talking about Mars power plants or something.
We're talking about
lasers.
Yeah, sharks with lasers on their heads.
Exactly. Anyway, so I suppose the purpose of this conversation today is primarily to talk a little bit more about understanding the journey of solar and being able to communicate it to customers, being able to, go through that whole auditing process and making sure they're getting the right products and solutions, and installing the right solutions, and then supporting them beyond the installation stage and that kind of thing. I think as well, like, it lends itself to quite an interesting conversation, which I think a lot of the listeners and viewers would be interested. I know are definitely engaged in the conversations we have in the group, which is around, and especially now, sort of in the wake of this whole COVID-19 pandemic, where you've got a lot of businesses that were typically, commercial-based installation, install, get in, get out, and now they're sort of thinking, okay, well, how can I change some of my service offerings so that it incorporates a bit more of, a maintenance side, for example, or a bit more of a, supporting the things that we do. And I think that's like it's the perfect conversation. I think so many businesses have been lending themselves to that sort of churn and burn mentality in relation to, installing services and getting out. Now they're thinking, okay, well, now we've installed these, why don't we offer services that can support, maintain, and uphold them,
Yeah. Sustain the business moving forward too, like they're a client for life sort of thing, rather than a one-off opportunity,
I know we had a comment in one of our coaching program at Trading Mate Pro this morning. And one of the guys was saying, we've had a client, who's asking me for a handover kit. Has anyone got any experience with these? And I'm just thinking straight away, this is a marketing dream. Like, the client's basically asking you on how they can involve you again in the future. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, funnily enough, like, I think it's actually a requirement with solar to give a handover manual with all the products and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, look, after sales support's massive, and I keep harping on about monitoring, but when you have a fleet of facilities after doing a few years of installs that, then start to need maintenance programs put in place, it's crazy, the amount of, I guess, talk it generates too for your business. When someone signs up to get solar, they say, we had these guys come and do solar. What we're trying to do is create a conversation that when someone signs up to do a solar system with us, or with a solar company in general, it's, we had these guys come put the solar panels in, and they also then, they maintain our system for us. Yes, it's a fee, but, over the time, the lifetime of the system, it's obviously worthwhile doing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's similar to what we do with websites. I mean, if we don't maintain the websites we build for our clients, they're going to break. We know it. We know it's going to happen. That's the reason why we introduced the care plan into it. And from the purpose of the client, I mean, well, you are one. Like, you haven't got to worry about it. Like, it's always looked after and maintained.
I'm telling you now, I have not worried about my website since we first signed up.
But it's essentially the same thing. I mean, you got these clients that are spending a lot of money on like a solar installation. It's almost like you should take it as a responsibility to at least offer them looking after it, beyond, because they don't know. And if they
No,
did know, they'd still not do it as good as you will do it.
no, that's right. And I mean, and to be fair as well, they shouldn't be touching certain things on these systems. I mean, look, fair enough, they should be able to get up there and give them a clean or a very light brush off or something like that. But, if a cable tie is broken or something's nested under there, they don't know if there's damaged cabling. And unfortunately, you can't turn solar off unless you've got a big blanket. So it's you don't start fiddling around with that stuff. It's quite unsafe, and it doesn't stop. It's a relentless type of energy. So, if you get hooked up to it, you're pretty much fried.
So why don't we start at the top and go from the process from the audit all the way through?
Yeah, 100%. So we're focusing on the commercial instance in this process, right? But you can take a smaller scale version of all of this in a residential sense too. So there's no reason why you can't really reflect this as a lower thing. And it's just not a financially feasible thing to do this entire end-to-end process on a residential level to the extent that we do for commercial. But effectively, we always start with an energy audit and a solar feasibility report. So that encompasses, what's your current electrical demand? So where's our baseline? What are we going to work everything out of? And that's your past bills. You've got to get something called interval data from your retailer. Your energy retailer will give you that data. We gather that information. We work out what you're using in the likely sun hours on a month-by-month basis. That gives you a very, very in-depth idea of what size system you currently need. Then it goes another step further, and in this energy audit and solar feasibility process, we check on how efficient are the current appliances you've got either in the commercial building. We've worked with a bunch of schools, and we always go through and have a look at the big things, canteens, old fridges that get donated or whatever, really nice thing to do and save a few $100 for that school, but a new fridge long term is going to cost them less in energy. So you know what I mean? So it's kind of, should these things, it's a great thought and all that, very nice.
Education, though, again.
Yeah, it's that education. So we just pull that up, put it on the surface and say, listen, you could do this better, you could do this better, and swap out a few lights. And we're likely going to bring your current demand from here down to here, which, gives you, obviously, you could then put a smaller solar system on there, or, put the same size solar system and let them know, look, with the same size system, you've got a little bit of excess for storage down the track, and, put it in now, you'll get a rebate for it or a feed-in tariff, and then you move forward from there. So we also do a prelim design, and we say, listen, these are the ideal locations for panels to go. This is the way that you can install them in those locations. And, if you do that, this is the capacity based on the average panel size at present. And then it goes through to, it just a visual from an aerial photography, like near map or whatever. You can see where these panels are going to go as well.
Is this consulting, or is this?
It is. It's part of the process. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, it happens anyway. So why shouldn't the client get a version of it? So, you have to do these things anyway. You could stop. You could quite easily go into a building and say, you currently use this much energy. That's the size of solar system you need to cover your current load. That'll be your return on investment. Great, go and do it. You could quite easily go and do it and then give them a manual at the end, compliance, and say, this is the products we used. I just don't think that that's the greatest way to do it. I'm always about using less energy and then trying to generate your own to cover what you currently are.
Yeah. That makes sense.
In that initial part too, we then do finance education, and we can run scenarios. You could use your own capital. You could get your loans. You could also do potentially power purchase agreements as well. So we just try and give you a few options and run the scenario of what it looks like for you down the track. But that initial stage is the most important as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, totally.
Look, the design and installation stuff is what I'll go on to in a second. The only other part of the energy audit feasibility report is what some people don't know is when you're going through a solar, when you know, on a commercial scale, when you're trying to put solar into a building, if the cabling's not the right size,
Right.
or run too far, if the switchboards aren't up to date, because a lot of these places are old, roof purlin thickness,
Right.
like you have to engineer these systems to a T. Otherwise, if something did happen in an extreme circumstance, you're not covered, and neither is the installer and designer. So it's really important to design these systems, you know, from the get-go in that initial auditing stage, you know, just all the information you can gather, because otherwise, if you get to a point where the system gets defected because the main switch isn't the right size,
Right.
then the client's going to be out of pocket for someone to come and change that.
And so with that in mind, is that, I mean, like purlin size, for example,
Yeah.
is that something you would always recommend over engineering?
It comes down to the manufacturer's guidelines. So they'll, like, for certain purlin thicknesses, they'll tell you which gauge screw and to use, what type of screw to use to fix their product, and how many of them, how close to space them.
Right.
You know, and they've got different zones. You know, an internal zone's got less wind loading than an external zone or an edge zone. So,
Yeah. Okay.
you know, there's a lot to stick to when you are designing these systems and engineering. But yeah, you could 100% over engineer it and just put more feet, more fixing points to the roof down, but also spans of steel. Like if there's too much weight on them, you're going to put too much pressure on the roof, and it's probably not what it was designed for. More than a roof to carry.
So I guess that becomes a lot trickier when you're attacking existing structures. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, when they're not being built from ground up, and you're involved at that initial stage, which is what happens 90% of the time.
Yeah.
You know, we usually come in once the building's built, and they go, right, so this person bought the product, they bought the facility, and they've gone and thrown, you know, a bunch of kilns in there, or, you know, refrigeration. Now it's a storage depot and whatever. They want this whole roof filled up with solar panels, and you say, well, you know,
Tough shit.
For it? Yeah, or you have to pay a couple of $1,000s to get an engineer's report, basically. Yeah. So you really, apart from the design of solar and, you know, working out that side of things, you really need to work out whether the structure can handle the product.
And with that whole design installation element of, I suppose, that, you know, this process, going back to what you were saying in the last episode, I suppose you've got to be wary of the fact that there's a good chance that there's a newer product that's going to have a different specification, different load bearing, and all that kind of stuff. Come time you're actually ready to, the roof's on and you're ready to get up there and put these things in, right?
For sure.
So you kind of got to take that into consideration.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, in any build circumstances, you know, if on a commercial scale you're building a factory and you know you're going to be in there in 6 months, and not only do you want to sort of work out what product you're going to use fairly late down the process, but you're also going to need to know, well, we haven't built the roof yet, but we're planning on putting a couple of tons worth of solar panels on it. So we're going to want to make sure the engineers have allowed a, you know, short enough spans or thick enough purlins or whatever they might be. You know, they've got to understand, like, our current best case scenario is a 22 kilo solar panel, right? And yes, it might be better down the track, but it might not. So,
yeah, but again, yeah, I suppose going back to over engineering, as long as you've ideally, they're probably not going to get heavier, are they?
No, I doubt it. No, unless aluminium does. I don't know. But they're using less aluminium. Some aren't using any. It's just a laminated glass panel. That's it. Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah. So look, I mean, the next part of that process is the design and installation planning. This process is really important because it can come down to, I mean, even as far as time of year is concerned for a place like a school, right? Like, again, I go on about schools, but we've done a lot of work with schools, and we like to work with schools because we've sort of worked out our process with them, and you know, it sort of goes really well. But, you know, for safety reasons, you know, we're working on a roof. If something is accidentally dropped, yeah, we've got lanyards for tools and stuff like that, but there's products that, you know, if it dropped at the wrong time, there's people there on large scale that could be injured. So the obvious request that we get is, can you install in a short
Holidays.
time, which is always 2 weeks, and can you do that over a school holiday period? So you've got to consider that kind of stuff, and that's what I mean by the design and installation planning process. It's really important to sort of nut that out as well. So
I imagine it would be pretty rare in those instances too that you'd be the only trade that would have to fall into that 2-week time slot. There's probably like builders, plumbers, sparkies, landscapers.
Maintenance galore, mate. Yeah, maintenance galore, roof cleaners.
Yeah.
It's pretty insane. But look, I mean, the process we follow and what we generally think should be the process, because it's obvious to us, is that in the design and installation process, once you've got your audit and your understanding of what can be done to get the place to run more efficiently, we've got to do design confirmation following, a proper site inspection. There is not one job that I've ever done where I have not looked at the job physically on site, either myself or one of our other technicians, to assess the site, because Google Street View and Nearmap don't give you everything you need to know about how you're going to get panels on a roof and what's dangerous, what's not, and what's the traffic like. Do you need traffic control? Should we use a crane? There's a lot of different things. So site inspection is huge, and you obviously want to look at making sure when you're spending as much money as you could be spending in any way that you spend it with solar, that someone's coming out to the site to check it every single. In that initial process, we also get an engineering report done. So as I was saying about purl and spacings and that information that we gather, we send that to an engineer that we use, and he'll say to us, listen, so the span and the way it's structured, we take videos, we take photos, we get tape measures out, little rulers, and we measure all this stuff, and we let him know, what region we're in. He will then take that information and say, listen, the weighting on that roof should not be higher than this amount, which then dictates how many panels you can put on. And that might make you go from a solution that's a lower wattage, better price point product to a higher wattage for the same footprint, slightly longer ROI, but a better solution. Really sort of starts to direct you once you get down to the practical planning side of things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then he'll say, listen, if you're going to use this product, Clenergy, Schledder, these different brands that you can use to mount the product to the roof, he'll say the wind rating, he'll basically build a system and tell you how to install it on an actual physical report, to go to site with and work with, and then tick off and say, I did it exactly to this design.
Yeah, okay. Compliance, eh?
Oh, it's huge, yeah. And it should be. I mean, these things can't come off the roof. They shouldn't be flying anywhere. So after that, we then work in our coordination. This sort of moves into the installation side of it. So your design's finalised in the first step of your design process after your audit. The installation needs to be coordinated quite, specifically. Every site is completely different. You might need a crane, you might not. You might need a scaffold, you might need a scissor lift. You might need to do it in certain hours. You might, there's a lot of different things you've got to coordinate and work out how you're going to do this, but also fit it into a time frame that's reasonable to one. We're a business to make a profit out of the job, but also not have to force the job so that, you make mistakes or things get missed, or, and that's obviously, that comes later in the installation process to make sure you haven't done that, but just to not put that pressure on, because it also creates a bit of safety.
I mean, essentially that's just project management though, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. But believe it or not, it doesn't happen with some companies that will, especially the ones that don't go to site or don't want to go to site. They've got a sales team that, make contact with you, direct phone calls or whatever. I mean, it works for some, it works for others. And I don't do it, but I'm not against it. It's just, if they don't come to site, they don't know how to manage your job. How do they manage your site, your expectations? Who's the guy running the site? What's their relationship like? And all that kind of stuff too. So
that's the old classic case of, engineers giving you instructions over the phone. You're standing there on site telling them why it works.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly.
Same sort of thing. I'm very familiar.
It'll be right. Yeah,
very familiar with that.
It's about 5 meters. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So look, the next sort of process in that installation side of things is going to be an inspection report and system evaluation. So that this comes by during and slightly after the installation process. So as I was saying, where the engineer will tell you, how to work within the parameters of that building and the products that you're using. How do we know that you've done that? And that comes by, internal inspection for us, where we'll go someone who knows the job but wasn't involved in the installation, and they'll go by and they'll have a look at the installation and they'll check the engineer's report. There's a completely non-biased, there's no one leaning one certain way, because we're all about, learning if we did stuff up. But to just say, yes, this is done exactly to Tim's report, the product's installed, of this quality, and it's all good. So, you want to make sure that there is an inspection and a system evaluation, even as far as what is the system actually producing, once it's been installed, and is that in the parameter you designed it to.
Is that like a legal obligation?
No,
Right.
It's not a legal obligation at all. There is the Clean Energy Council provide a commissioning checklist, and it's a guideline. It's not a requirement, but I would suggest people do it even for potential issues down the track.
It's not a legal obligation, but it's an obligation.
It's an obligation. Yeah, it's a best practice obligation.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
you really should do.
Yeah.
And then pretty simply, it flows into the commissioning. Our process flows into the commissioning of the system and release of operation handbook to a representative. In our process that I'm looking at, again, with schools, there's usually one representative, whether that be a general manager or a site manager or something like that, or a principal, whatever it might be. Then someone needs to be educated on this system and have access to the monitoring dashboard, so that they know what they're looking at and how often to look at it, but also that, we're looking at it and, what happens if something isn't quite right? What's that process going to look like? When should they look at maintenance? Then that comes in to our after sales support side of things too. So, which is as important as putting the system on the roof, as far as I'm concerned.
And what does that look like?
So the after sales stuff is going to be, your quarterly review. So we jump on more often than quarterly, if I'm honest, because I'm a little bit obsessed with this stuff. But, because we base everything off performance. So if we put a solar system on there, it's not performing. Why was it not performing? Why is it not getting what our client, thought they were getting? If it's over, then great. We've got them a better result, but could we figure that out sooner in the process whilst designing it? So yeah, look, we look all the time, but at least quarterly, someone should be looking at the product via the monitoring system and making sure that for that time of year, is it producing what the design software said it should, depending on ideal circumstances or averages based off, 10 years worth of BOM, Bureau of Meteorology.
Not actual bombs.
Yeah, no, data, we base it off pretty accurate stuff, but is it actually doing what it was supposed to do? And that's a quarterly sort of scenario. That's what we stick by. It kind of brings up good things or bad things. And it's generally a quarterly bill cycle, so it kind of works with that as well.
Nice.
Yeah. We also do yearly on-site assessments, which we suggest everyone do. Solar businesses that aren't, are generally losing out. Like, it's a really good business opportunity to move forward with as well. And it creates a really sustainable business model where you have a client that you are going back to because that's what they signed up for, and they're happy with that. And you've got more work coming up out of that site. You might not have to do anything, but it's a paid yearly on-site assessment. You're there, you're delivering a product in return, and it's, it'll be a short report, bunch of photos, a quick walkthrough, and everyone's happy.
So from a product perspective, what does that look like? Are you selling them like a membership kind of thing, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, they sign up for it at the start when they sign up with us. So, we'll say to them, listen, it's a It's a $500 yearly fee. You can run it. We'll sign you up for the first 2, and then you can run it through whoever you want after that. And we'll go out there and we'll give them a physical report in return and say, this is your yearly report. So what I found was a couple of cable ties may have broken, or, I noticed that,
Duct tape's come unstuck.
Yeah. Or there's a pelican nesting under a panel. I don't know. I don't even know if pelicans nest, but
there's a pelican installing your panel.
Yeah. So is there, because that's actually a big thing. Is animals do find solar panels a really good home because it's sheltered from the rain and it's warm during the day, so it's perfect. But just those kinds of things. But that's the product they get. They get a report in return. It happens at least twice, with our clients. And, if there is more maintenance, it always comes at a quoted cost, So if there is maintenance or cleaning that needs to be done, then we'll say to you, listen, this is what we suggest. This is what it's going to cost you. Are you happy to proceed?
That's a pretty, I think, a good business model for a lot of listeners and viewers out there, for you guys that are looking at ways you can incorporate a bit of a recurring revenue stream into a traditionally, install and leave sort of business model. And I've been toying with these sort of ideas for years with builders and things like that. How can you get back in this space? And sure, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the one that carry the work out. You look at a builder, they're not going to be wanting to go back in there and, do little, small repairs, but it opens up a lot of good opportunities and potential conversations with, like a remedial builder or, joiners or carpenters that may want to do the smaller jobs. And, you can kind of build a bit of a referral network around those little things. But essentially it's about just taking the blinkers off.
Absolutely. But I think also in some ways business in general has become a little bit disconnected. I find it quite disconnected with the solar industry in that, so Australians, we're all about a relationship, right? We take the piss, we love a laugh, but we also, when we do business, we also like to know that, this guy's got our back, and that trust level to me has dropped off a lot over the years. And for us as well, so we're trying to create a long-term relationship here. It doesn't have to be you doing anything at the end of the day, but keeping in touch with these people and letting them know that you have got their back and you will look after things and be able to at least manage them creates a relationship with them where their further conversations may be, we use this guy, and what they do afterwards is really, it's really supportive, and we found it great. They don't really come back and do the work, but they know what they did when they were here, and they can coordinate the right person to come and do that. It's a conversation that people want to hear. They don't want to hear people coming in, smashing in a solar system, and then disappearing. It's not like that. Yes, they are very hardy systems, and a lot of them you could probably not have to worry about at all, but it's just not the way that I think it should go. And I don't think that business relationship has been thought out enough.
Oh, that's great, mate. I mean, I know we love talking about systems and processes and things like this on the show, and there's heaps of conversations always popping up in the community about, different ways to deliver on services and things like that. And I think what you've got here, that process that you've run through is fantastic. And I mean, I encourage all the listeners and viewers out there, if you don't, I mean, obviously, I'm not encouraging them to steal your process, but I certainly encourage them to steal the mindset of getting in that way of thinking and how to, build out a deliverable, checklist of things to do. Because essentially, once you do that, you can productize it, And,
100%. See, and the way I say, mate, people can take and use whatever they want. There is a point of IP, but what I really like to get at is that, if we're all on a similar plane and we're all heading in a similar direction, not doing identical things together, but all after the same end result, it's going to be better for our industry anyway.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Was it a rising tide?
Yeah.
What's that quote? Something about floating ships. But anyway, a rising pelican floats ships or something. But no, it's true. If you can increase the standard across the board, then it certainly makes, when you're out there quoting jobs, a delight because essentially you're quoting against businesses that are, kind of got the same morals, the same standards, and they're putting the same amount of work in that you are. And then it makes it a lot easier to swallow when you don't win a job against someone who's, at least is going to do a good job.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's a lot different to swallow when you go, right, I know I got beaten on price and product.
Exactly. And then I know they're going to get a shitty installation and they're going to have issues down the track.
And it bugs you. Yeah.
Awesome, mate. Well, look, I want to thank you for your time once again. This has been fantastic. This is Gareth from greenelec.com.au, Sydney, Northern Beaches-based electrician, works the solar space. Does a fantastic job, and I've been nagging him for years to come on the show and talk about it, and it's finally happened.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate you nagging me for years, and I really appreciate you having us on here and giving us some time to get some stuff across, eh?
Absolutely, mate, and I look forward to chatting to you in the future. Thanks very much.
See you, mate.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.